release of Renegades, people have been asking me if the game is worth coming back to or worth playing, so I made this video to talk about some of the main pros and cons, in my opinion, with Destiny 2 and my thoughts on the Renegades DLC as a whole. Quick disclaimer, this review will contain general spoilers for the story. I also want to say that my review focuses mainly on PvE. With that out of the way, let's talk about Renegades campaign, the seasonal activity, and endgame raid and dungeon content. Firstly, let's start off with the pros and cons of the campaign. In my opinion, this campaign is actually pretty enjoyable. It's the first time in recent memory that I've ever run the campaign on all three characters pretty early on because I usually avoid rerunning until I absolutely have to. A lot of the cutscenes are visually stunning and provide more background into what the Nine are, which connects with the campaign from Edge of Fate. We also learn more about the origins of our own Guardian. You end up going through all three of the new maps on the planets Mars, Venus, and Europa. I think they did an especially good job with Venus and the swampy Dagobah look. A lot of times there's a ton of lore, but it's not well explained. This story was one of the better written ones. The campaign guides you through the new Fire and Ice exotic mission, which is gorgeous. I enjoyed playing through it blind, and I didn't mind running it back for catalyst puzzles. There are also a ton of screenshot-worthy areas. Some of the campaign missions are actually really fun, and you get to run around in an Imperial Walker. My favorite one is the one where we blow up the Nightfall battle station. The new Sparrow vehicle also handles really nicely, which is a plus. Now let's talk about the cons for the campaign. You have to play the tutorial for the Lawless Frontier basically 3 times as a part of the campaign, which gets old pretty fast, especially after your first character. Several of the cutscenes or dialogue portions are bugged, so you cannot skip anything. And if you try to skip something, Drifter may hold you hostage and you need to change character, which again is not great for replayability. Ironically, as someone who likes Star Wars, the Star Wars aspects of the campaign fell flat for me. If you've seen A New Hope, you're going to almost beat for beat know the campaign before you even play it. For example, we're working with Honor to stop the Nightfall weapon, which is basically the Death Star, from firing on Guardians and stripping them of their light. Drudge and Bale is literally just Kylo Ren, but in red, both in personality and design. And while I'm sure this is an intentional decision, I just don't understand why they chose to write it this way. Outside of the campaign, a lot of the Star Wars aspects like the weapon design and the environmental design are clearly more inspired by Star Wars and not taken directly from characters that already exist. I think Honor is a good example of how to handle the collaboration because she uses a practical blade and has Star Wars aspects, but is also her own unique Destiny character instead of a copy of some pre-existing Star Wars character. Anyway, the Nightfall weapon fires. Feels familiar, because we suck at our job, but don't worry, I guess all of the dozens of Guardians on Mars weren't too relevant, because we never talk about them again. Overall, I just wish they'd told a more interesting story using Star Wars-inspired elements, rather than play out a parody of what already happens in the main Star Wars franchise. We did a Star Wars marathon with friends who hadn't seen it to prep for the DLC release, and the refresher made it even more apparent to me when I played the actual story. Now let's talk about the Lawless Frontier and the seasonal activity. I'm not going to go in depth into the mechanics of how the Lawless Frontier works because I've already made a video on that. What I will say is that it feels very extraction shooter adjacent. You do your contracts, complete whatever side objectives you want in the run, maybe deal with an invader and do a little PvP, and then exfil back to Vanu Tharsis social space to spend your credits. It's pretty fun and a lot of the weapons are very good. The Fast Talker SMG is great, the Heavy Sniper does massive amounts of damage, and the Uncivil Discourse hand cannon is just the best damage hand cannon in the game right now because of the tier 5 shiny perk. To put it into perspective, you can solo two-phase the Witness with this thing right now. I play this game a lot and I actually still don't have a lot of the best gear because it's pretty rare, but it's very worth grinding for. It's nice to have loot to chase in the game again. Tharsis also has a lot of side quests, hidden credits in the environment, and little vendors where you can buy materials like Ascendant Shards and other rare stuff. It's worth poking around, and all the little secrets give the Lawless Frontier a lot of life in my opinion. There's also a lot of upgrades to unlock and grind for with different factions, which again, I'm not going to go super into, but if you like progression systems where you can unlock new types of vehicles and are playing a lot of Lawless Frontier, you're going to get a lot of playtime out of it. I also want to mention the Praxic Blade because I've had a ton of fun with it overall. Like I said, the Fire and Ice exotic mission is good, there's some replay value with getting all the puzzles done for different catalysts, and you can upgrade a lot of the parts for your blade by playing Lawless Frontier. There's also the cosmetic component, which incentivizes you to play different aspects of the new DLC. Some of the colors are very rare, and I still don't have them all, which gives you something else to chase if you like customizations. As a weapon, the blade is also fun to use and does decent damage. We actually used it in our contest Equilibrium clear. Speaking of Equilibrium, let's talk about the raid and dungeon content this season. The new Equilibrium dungeon is solid and has some new cosmetics, including a lightsaber color and a shader for full solo. It also has a lot of solid guns, like the sniper, the new Eager Edge Sword, and a scout for PvP. The dungeon has a feat system, just like the Desert Perpetual, so if you feel up to a challenge, you can raise the difficulty and guarantee tier 5 loot. The dungeon is also infinitely farmable, so you can grind as much as you want. Unfortunately, Bungie has also made some wide-sweeping changes to the armor charge system. You can no longer store armor charge until you swap to surges or hit a special finisher. Instead, you you have to have a font or surge constantly ticking on your running loadout, and then keep that timer when you swap to your damage loadout. This is a change I want to bring up because it's definitely changed how the game feels to play for me personally. As a solo and low man player, I think it's the worst change they've ever made, and I bring it up because some of the people asking if they should come back are endgame players that took a break and enjoyed that kind of content. If you're not that kind of player, this change probably won't matter to you at all, but if you're a solo player, keep this in mind. Additionally, Contest Equilibrium had not swap implemented, once again, despite the overwhelming feedback that it's a terrible and unwanted modifier. Again, if you're an endgame rad player, this is something to keep in mind if you're considering coming back to Destiny with plans of racing in the future. They are not listening to the feedback regarding not swap and seem hellbent on leaving it in place for some reason. Going back to the original question of is the game worth playing, the short answer is it depends. If you're interested in grinding to customize your Praxic Blade, like the Star Wars aesthetic, are interested in the new dungeon, or are a returning hardcore player who needs the best meta dungeon and frontier weapons, Renegades might be worth it to you. If none of these things interest you, if you're looking to hop on and play the story for a few hours, aren't interested in the Lawless Frontier, gameplay loop, or weapons, think the Praxic Blade is uninteresting, or don't care about the dungeon, honestly, you can probably sit this one out. Personally, following the Contest Equilibrium dungeon race, I'm struggling to find things to do in the game, especially with the armor charge change and the continued implementation of not swap and rad content. I used to spend all my time on the game doing solos and low mans, even when the seasonal content slowed down, but with those changes, Destiny suddenly seems to have a lot less to do. Either way, once you've wrapped up the dungeon content and have the lightsaber colors you want, it's more or less time to move on to a different game for the season. It really just depends on what you want out of the game and what kind of player you are.